Set 11 has just been released, which means a new rank season to climb and 5 brand new comps to do it with. These comps have been selected using the stats from over 230 games from challenger players, plus my own experience playing the set on PvE, so let's get into it. First up we have a Lillia flex comp. Lillia is a very strong 4-cost AP carry with AoE damage that hits the backline. There are a few variations of this comp that work very well, such as 7 Mythic 4 Invoker, 6 Invoker 3 Mythic, or 4 Umbral 4 Invoker, and all of them have performed well, which is why this comp can be flexed so easily. The 4 Umbral version seems to perform better than the others due to the fact that the Umbral hexes give your Lillia an execute, making it much easier to take out the backline. Augments, you want any of the premium AP related augments such as Jeweled Lotus or Magic Wand, but also want to look out for new trait specific or emblem related ones like Mana Shield and Invoker Crest. Boom is a new augment to Set 11 which is very strong in this comp as it's built around getting off a lot of ability casts which will take full advantage of the additional damage bonus. Itemization on Lillia should be focused on a mana generation items such as Shojin, then any strong AP related items such as JG and Deathcap. If you get dropped any additional AP items, then you can look at putting them on a Loon and any AD items on the set. Your second itemization priority should be Annie as your main tank with any tank items that you can make. Make sure that you have at least one MR Shred item such as Ionic Spark on the board. In the early game, the best openers to look out for are any Mythic Starts and Cogmore as your item holder for Lillia. He is a strong early unit with a lot of damage and can hold the items throughout the entire game until you find Lillia. Just make sure you hold an additional cog to swap him out later unless you find an item remover. As this is a flex comp, you don't need to hit a Mythic Start to end up with it, and you can instead look at playing around any AP item holder with a strong frontline like Wardens or Behemoths. Just make sure you play your strongest board as the goal is to get to level 8 with as much health as possible. In the mid game you can play flexibly around either Mythic, Umbral or Invokers, and this will most likely indicate what type of final board you want to commit to. If you find lots of Invokers you can commit to 6 Invoker, lots of Mythic units you can go to 7 Mythic, or Umbral, you can play the 4 Umbral 4 Invoker board. You want to be leveling to 7 around 4-1 and maintaining a stable economy for leveling to 8 around 4-5, that you have enough gold to roll for your final board. Once you do hit level 8, you want to roll down and look for buying Lillia plus any Invokers, Umbral or Mythic units you can find. From there you want to commit to one of the 3 boards we've gone through, and you should be stable to econ back up to go level 9 once you've 2-starred Lillia and at least one main frontline unit such as Annie or Tahm Kench. As this is a flex comp, you shouldn't really need to pivot out of it unless you don't find any Lillias at all, or you're being heavily contested. In that case, you can look at playing in the Fated Arcanists with Syndra as your main carry, but this is a slightly weaker board. Next we have my favourite comp so far, which utilises the 2-cost Dryad carries of Kindred and Gnar. The reason I like this comp so much is because it has 2 carries that have completely different damage types, allowing you to play it regardless of what item components you get given. Dryads get bonus health and AP for every enemy that dies whilst the trait is active, but getting it active as early as possible will give you the strongest version of the comp. I wouldn't look at committing to the comp unless I don't get it active before stage 3, as you lose out on a lot of stats. For augments, I'd look out for any generic combat augments such as Harm Assist or Healing Orbs, then any reroll augments such as Heroic Grab Bag and Team Building. The Dryad specific augment Mulch is very good in this comp if you get it as your first augment, as it gives you additional stacks and will help your comp scale much better into the late game. Just make sure to scout before taking it and committing. Itemization, as I mentioned earlier, is very simple. AP items onto Kindred, AD items onto Gnar, and any tank items onto your main tank, which will most likely be all. Kindred really needs a mana generation item in order to deal maximum damage, so prioritise Tears on Carousel for blue buff, and Gnar needs at least one method of healing such as BT or Hodge. The other slots just build whatever strong AP or AD items you can find, focusing on damage for Kindred and tanky AD items for Gnar. For the early game, as you're playing a comp that scales for how long the trait is active, you really want a Dryad opener in order to reach the full potential of the comp. The comp is a little tricky to play early as it scales based on the number of enemies that die with the Dryad active, so you want to be strong enough to be killing at least 1 or 2 units each round, but at the same time it's a 2-cost reroll comp, so you don't want to be leveling up early, instead preserving econ for level 6. Aim to play the strongest board you can with Dryad active and prioritise positioning for extra kills. I've had a lot of success with positioning Rek'Sai alone in the front line, and then backlining all of the units, as this allows Rek'Sai to AoE stun multiple units and get some extra kills. Going into the mid game, you want to be leveling 6 around stage 3-2 and slow rolling any excess gold over 50 to 3-star Kindred and Gnar. Once you have at least 7 copies of either Kindred or Gnar, you can look at going all in and rolling down to 20 to 30 gold to hit the final copies. If you manage to hit one 3-star and not the other, then you can econ back up and go to level 7 before trying to 3-star the other one. Going into the late game, you'll be hitting level 8 much later than other standard 4-cost carry comps, but with the board strength of 2 3-star carries, it should be stable enough to take on level 8 boards. You can then cap out your board by trying to fit in 4 Reaper, and then eventually Fated if you reach level 9, or if you find an emblem. As long as you're uncontested and manage to find Dryad early on, it should be an easy top 4. Pivoting out of this comp is very difficult, as it does rely on you committing early on to Dryad. You can look at playing this Reroll Yone Reaper board if you manage to find an early 2-star Yone to drop Gnar for. Next we have another Reroll comp, but this time a 3-cost unit instead. It uses Bard as your main 3-star carry and Tarm as your main tank, activating 5 Mythic and splashing in Story Weaver to get the shred bonuses from Kayle. This is a standard 3-cost reroll comp that looks to slow roll at level 7 to 3-star both Bard and Tarm, before going to level 8 and capping the board with more frontline. Similar augments as the Dryad reroll comp in that you want any reroll augments to help you 3-star Bard as quickly as possible, and then any strong combat augments. If you find any mythic related augments such as it's going to be epic or the mythic crown, then these are both great indicators to go for this comp, provided that you have the items to support it. Itemization at Gwynsu's is a must on Bard for the scaling, and then build any strong AD item. Bard is unique in that his ability deals both physical and magical damage, benefiting from both AP and AD, so look out for items like GS and Gunblade to take advantage of that, as that'll make the comp strong against both armor and magic resist based comps. Your next priority after that should then be itemizing Tarm as your main tank with whatever tank items that you can find. In the early game, the best opener is to play around Story Weaver and Trick Shot with either Severe or Teemo as your main item holder for Bard. Story Weaver is strong early and mid, as it gives you an extra unit to deal damage, and the ability from Kayle which gives armor and magic shred. Make sure not to level, and instead preserve econ so that you can level to 7 as soon as possible, where you'll roll down to stabilize. You should be leveling to 7 around stage 4-1, and if you got lucky and managed to 2-star Bard beforehand, then it's at this point that you can slow roll for Bard 3. If you weren't so lucky, you'll most likely need to roll down to around 30 gold to find Bard 2 and 2-star any of your frontline units like Tahm Kench. This should stabilise you well enough to econ back up to 50 and slow roll for 3-star Bard and finding any of the 4-cost tanks of Galio and Nor. Once you've managed a 3-star Bard, you can then level up to 8 and slot in your 5th mythic unit that should safely get you a top 4 depending on how soon you got Bard 3. With any 3-cost reroll comps, you only want to commit to them if you naturally find 2 or 3 copies of the unit you're rerolling, and you've scouted to make sure that you're not contested. After that, it's just a case of rolling to 2-star your 4-cost units before going to level 9 to cap out your board. Pivot from this comp, you can skip rolling for Bard and instead go straight to level 8 and playing the Porcelain Ashe board, which we're about to go through next. This comp uses Rageblade as well as having an AP item holder for you if you built Gunblade, so should be an easy transition at level 8. Another 4-cost carry comp, but this time with Ashe as your main carry with a beefy Warden frontline. This comp is fairly straightforward to play, but does rely on a strong economy to fully cap your board out with 2-star Lysandra and Set. I'd look at playing this comp if you get a strong opener and manage to preserve a lot of health and econ in the early rounds. This board stabilizes at level 8, but only really comes online at level 9 once you can 2-star your 5 costs, but it's not something that you can easily play from behind. With this comp, you want to be looking out for augments that can help you win rounds, such as strong combat augments, or ones that can help you get to level 8 and 9 quicker, such as Silver Spoon. Porcelain augments to gain an emblem will also give you a big boost in damage, as it will allow you to go to full Porcelain without finding Lysandra early. Then once you do find her, you can drop Lux for a strong 5-cost unit like Udyr or Wukong. Itemization should be prioritizing Rageblade on Ashe, along with any AD items such as IE, Last Whisper, or Deathblade. If you don't manage to build Last Whisper, then make sure to build an Aven Shroud on one of your tanks, as Armor Shred is a must for this comp. Without it, you'll struggle to take out the front line and you'll quickly get overrun. The next priority should be a Mumu with any tank items you can make, and any AP items thrown onto Lysandra. In the early game, as I mentioned before, you want to be playing the strongest board you can to preserve health, and try to win streak if possible. A Sniper start with Warden frontline is one of the best openers you can build, that has great item holders in Senna and Caitlyn, and will allow for an easy transition later into the game. As it's a 4-cost carry comp, you should follow the standard leveling strategy of 5 at 2-5, 6 at 3-2, 7 at 4-1, and 8 around 4-5, or whenever you can level and still have at least 30 gold to roll down with, find your 4 costs. Going into the mid game, you can look at playing Ink Shadows for a free item and a beefier frontline with bruisers, or you can start adding in Porcelain for an easier transition at level 8. Another option for this comp, if you have many Sennas, is to instead stay at level 6 and play Senna Reroll with 3-star Senna and Aatrox as your main carry and tank. This is another strong comp that I was thinking of including in this list, but I chose the Ashe comp instead as I wanted 2 viable 4-cost comps in the list. You should be leveling to 8 somewhere around 4-5 with 40 to 50 gold to roll down with, and you want to roll to look for any Wardens plus Ashe to stabilise your board. Slam any tank items onto your Amumu if you haven't already, and then switch your AD items onto Ashe. From here you should be stable if you hit Ashe 2, and then you can econ back up to go level 9 and cap out your board. Pivoting from this comp can be done relatively easy if you manage to find a lot of Bards or Aphelios when leveling, and then pivot to reroll either of them. The Aphelios board is very strong right now and has been very popular, so you'll need to ensure that you're uncontested before you commit to either. And finally, our last comp is another 3-cost reroll, but this time with a melee AD carry of Yone. This has been performing very well in tournaments held on PBE, as Yone is very strong at 2-star and allows you to remain healthy while slow rolling to 3-star him. You also have the option to 3-star Alune at the same time if you get dropped additional AP items, but it shouldn't take priority over Yone as it will impact your ability to top 4. Positioning is key with any Umbral comps, as the units only get the execute bonus if they're standing in the hexes. This means that you need to ensure your main damage units start in the highlighted hexes to maximise your damage. Similar augment choices to our other reroll comps, we want any that give us free duplicators to 3-star our carries as fast as possible, and then any augments to give us additional traits such as the Umbral Crest or Crown. With an Umbral emblem you can put it on Ornn over Darius, which will activate both Dryad and Behemoth for some extra stats and frontline, which significantly improves the win rate of the comp. Itemization should be focused on both Yone and Kayn with strong AD items that also provide survivability. This can be anything like Titans, QSS, BT, Hodge, or Edge of Night, and then make sure you have a Rage Blade on Yone for scaling. This comp outputs a lot of damage, so fights are over quick. Don't look at prioritizing tank items unless you have to. In the early game, you don't want to level and instead preserve as much econ as possible. You want to stabilize your board early on in this comp so you can try to lose streak in order to get additional gold and hit level 7 much quicker. Openers such as Umbral and Duelists make for an easy transition at level 7, and have great item holders for Yone such as Kiana and Darius. If you do manage to find an early Yone, or just a lot of 2-star units early on, then you can look at leveling up and try to win streak, only if you have at least 2 2-star units, and items that you can slam such as BT. In the mid game, the same with the Bard comp, you should be leveling to 7 around 4-1, and if you got lucky and managed 2-star Yone beforehand, then it's at this point you can slow roll for Yone 3. If you weren't so lucky, you'll most likely need to roll down to around 30 gold to find Yone 2, else you won't be stable enough to slow roll. Then it's just a case of rolling any excess gold over 50 to look for Yone 3, and going all in to find him at 5-1 if you haven't already managed to hit him 3-star. Once you hit, you want econ back up to level 8 and finish your board. A 3-star Yone with a fully upgraded 4 Umbral and 4 Reaper board should be enough to top 4. Get higher placements will depend on how quickly you hit him, and if you manage to get an Umbral emblem or not. Be sure to check if you're contested before committing to this comp, as Yone is used in the Dryad reroll comp we went through. This is only consistent if you're uncontested. And that's it for this guide. I hope you found it helpful. Let me know how you get on in the comments if you try any of these comps, and I'll see you in the next one.